What if parting with your last $3 to save a stranger from brutal public embarrassment got you fired on the spot? But that very act of selfless humanity ended up gifting you a leadership career at one of America's top holding firms, a fully paid home of your own, and a lifelong mission to redefine how corporate development treats local communities. Today we're breaking down the unforgettable life arc of Andrea Cruz, a grocery store janitor whose quiet, unplanned kindness dismantled every unfair rule-based barrier stacked against working-class folks, while also exposing a critical flaw plaguing modern corporate hiring culture most professionals fail to notice. Let's start at the tense grocery checkout line that altered everything. A scene that lays bare how rigid retail corporate policies often strip basic human empathy from everyday customer interactions. A frail elderly woman stood frozen, clutching a single loaf of bread, patting every pocket of her coat in a panic, voice trembling as she admitted she'd left her wallet sitting on her kitchen counter at home. The cashier behind the register had zero patience left after 3 long minutes of waiting. The store's internal protocol mandated unpaid goods be surrendered immediately, and she threatened to call in on-site security to escort the older woman out in front of a growing line of impatient shoppers. The cashier muttered bitter asides loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, grumbling that folks who couldn't afford groceries had no business shopping and were just wasting everyone's valuable time, even hinting the elderly woman was attempting to steal food outright. This is where Andrea steps in. She's just a janitor on her shift, with only 3 crumpled dollar bills tucked in her uniform pocket. Every cent she'd set aside to cover her own household necessities that week. She cuts through the rising tension, stepping between the cashier and the humiliated senior to slide her last cash across the counter, covering the $3.5 price tag for the loaf of bread without a second thought. When the confused older woman tries to protest and offer some form of repayment later, Andrea just shakes her head soft and steady, explaining she can see hunger written all over the woman's face, and no person should ever be forced to carry the shame of being unable to pay for basic food in front of strangers. The elderly woman asks for her name, repeating Andrea Cruz over and over like she's etching it permanently into her memory before she leaves the store with her bread. Hours later, Andrea's manager pulls her into a back office for a disciplinary meeting, rain streaking the thin janitor's coat she'd worn all shift. The manager reads straight from the employee handbook, listing 3 formal policy violations. One by one, staff are forbidden from interrupting cashier transactions. Employees cannot create public disruptions that ruin other shoppers' shopping experience. And team members are banned from grandstanding with personal gestures of charity on company time. The manager hands her an official indefinite suspension notice, effective right then, stating her choice to intervene overridden official store management judgment. Andrea tries to beg for leniency, sharing her mother relies on her steady paycheck to afford vital prescription medication. Without this janitor job, she has no way to cover those life-sustaining pills. The manager's tone doesn't soften. He admits he likes Andrea as a hard-working staff member, but insists written rules override compassion, and the final decision can't be reversed. She's told to collect her final paycheck that upcoming Friday afternoon. What most people would overlook in this moment is a massive systemic failure within chain grocery retail nationwide. A 2025 National Retail Federation Industry Report I've referenced in prior business deep dives found over 78% of large supermarket chains enforce zero-tolerance customer transaction policies that ban staff from covering customer costs, with zero flexibility for extenuating circumstances like forgotten wallets or food insecurity. These policies are crafted solely to cut minor financial losses for corporate headquarters, with zero consideration for the human dignity of shoppers, or the moral burden placed on frontline low-wage workers like Andrea. We can pause to unpack a compelling alternate hypothetical here. If Andrea had clung to her $3 and walked away from the elderly woman's crisis that day, 2 separate lives would have followed drastically different paths. The senior would have endured public humiliation and a security escort, likely leaving the store traumatized and too embarrassed to shop there again, while Andrea would have kept her job, but carried the heavy guilt of watching a vulnerable stranger suffer shame when she held the means to help. That same evening, the elderly woman, Eleanor Sterling, a wildly successful real estate holding company founder, sat down for dinner with her daughter Victoria and recounted the entire checkout incident in vivid detail. She explains the young janitor had no clue who she was, no idea she was speaking to a multi-millionaire business owner. Andrea only saw a struggling older woman and sacrificed her own last bit of money to restore her dignity. Eleanor makes it clear to Victoria that this small gesture hit far harder than any expensive gift or charitable check she could ever write. That girl gave up money she almost certainly needed for rent, medicine, or her own meals, without a single demand for recognition or repayment, and Eleanor is determined to track her down to properly thank her face to face. She tasks her assistant Marcus with arranging a trip out to the Pilsen neighborhood, where the grocery store is located the very next morning, and orders the company car prepped for the visit. When Eleanor and Victoria finally locate Andrea outside the market, the young janitor is utterly confused about why two wealthy strangers have sought her out. Eleanor cuts straight to the point, telling Andrea that cheap loaf of bread she bought stands as the most priceless meal anyone has ever purchased for her, simply because it cost Andrea every single dollar she had to her name. Andrea invites them inside her cramped small apartment, where Eleanor learns Andrea was suspended from work solely for helping her that day. Andrea clarifies she didn't act out of any hope of gaining favor from a wealthy stranger. She didn't even realize Eleanor had a daughter or any wealth at all when she handed over her cash. This leads Eleanor to deliver a life-altering offer, a spot in Sterling Holdings' elite executive development management trainee program, a prestigious corporate track reserved almost exclusively for top-tier university business graduates with polished internship backgrounds. Andrea immediately pushes back, convinced there's some terrible misunderstanding. She lays out her resume plainly: 2 full years working as a grocery janitor, only a single brief college internship in business administration years prior, 0 formal office or corporate leadership experience whatsoever. Eleanor counters with a powerful observation backed by decades of running a multi-billion-dollar firm. Technical office skills can be taught through training modules, mentorship, and corporate coursework, but genuine, unselfish integrity cannot be drilled into a person. The willingness to sacrifice your own essential funds to lift up a complete stranger is an innate character trait most elite MBA candidates lack entirely. And that's exactly the quality she wants front and center within her company leadership team. After a moment of stunned silence, Andrea accepts the opportunity, promising to pour every ounce of effort into proving Eleanor didn't make a misplaced bet on her. Orientation kicks off the following Monday at 8 a.m. And Andrea quickly faces icy skepticism and quiet resentment from her fellow trainee peers, all of whom hold fancy business degrees and prestigious internship credentials. During a formal all-trainee introductory assembly, multiple program participants have filed formal complaints with HR questioning how a former grocery janitor secured entry to the exclusive trainee track, and several openly speculate Andrea received special unfair favoritism. Victoria steps forward to deliver a frank, unscripted address to the entire cohort to clear up all confusion. She cites a core company value Sterling Holdings has leaned into heavily since its founding. The business evaluates staff based on the choices they make under pressure, not their family background, academic GPA, or internship resume. She walks the room through Andrea's choice to surrender her last $3 for a stranger with no expectation of reward, then accept wrongful suspension with quiet dignity rather than lash out or file a lawsuit against the grocery chain. Victoria finishes her speech with a direct challenge. Anyone who doubts Andrea's place in the program is welcome to come discuss their grievances with her privately, but every trainee should redirect their energy toward proving they deserve their own spot at the table, rather than fixating on Andrea's unconventional origin story. Back home after long grueling training days, Andrea's mother notices her burning the candle at both ends, constantly overworking to keep pace with peers who have years of corporate experience ahead of her. Andrea admits she feels she has to work twice as fast just to catch up to everyone else's head start. Terrified she'll fall behind and lose the rare opportunity she's been given. Her mother reminds her to slow down and breathe, stating she's proud of Andrea, not for the fancy corporate position she's chasing, but for the compassionate, honorable person she's consistently chosen to be through every hardship life threw her way. 6 months into the trainee program, internal office friction escalates sharply from a senior team member named Victor Hale, who spent 8 years climbing the corporate ladder at Sterling Holdings, sacrificing birthdays, weekend family gatherings, and countless late nights to chase a coveted VP promotion. Victor sees with bitter jealousy over Andrea's rapid upward trajectory. He believes the high-stakes multi-billion-dollar Kowalski Trust Community Development Project leadership role should rightfully fall to him, not a former janitor with minimal corporate tenure. Secretly, he plots to sabotage Andrea's presentation ahead of the official client pitch, quietly altering the financial projection figures embedded in her slide deck to include inaccurate, flawed numbers that would sink the entire proposal if presented to the Kowalski investors. Victor tells his close work confidant he's confident he'll step in to fix the broken presentation after Andrea's public failure, securing the VP title for himself by clearing up the mess he manufactured. When the day of the investor pitch arrives, Andrea stands before the Kowalski board mid-presentation and halts the entire meeting unprompted, immediately flagging the mismatched, incorrect financial data on her slides. She informs the investors she cannot move forward with a presentation built on falsified numbers, honoring her personal commitment to full radical transparency within every Sterling project she leads. She requests a 48-hour window to reconstruct and deliver fully accurate projections, and states she will take complete personal accountability for any resulting setbacks if the revised figures fail to meet the client's standards. This split second choice shocks every investor in the room. In 20 years of reviewing corporate development proposals, the lead Kowalski representative admits he's never witnessed a presenter voluntarily pause their own pitch to admit data errors, as nearly every competing firm would push through the presentation and hope the discrepancies slipped past the board's notice. The investors leave the meeting deeply impressed by Andrea's unshakable integrity, telling Victoria they don't need the 2-day grace period. They want Andrea to lead the full partnership negotiations moving forward, as her commitment to honesty aligns perfectly with their vision for community-focused development that prioritizes trust over profit margins. After the pitch wraps, Victor confesses to Andrea that he's the one who tampered with her presentation slides, overwhelmed by years of simmering envy. He admits he watched Andrea walk into the company with zero established corporate clout and instantly received the high-profile projects and executive attention he'd spent nearly a decade fighting to earn. Andrea responds with unexpected kindness, refusing to lash out or retaliate against him. She explains compassion isn't a reward you earn from other people, it's a daily choice you make for others, and she intimately understands the crippling fear of losing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that can twist a person's core character out of alignment with their values. She tells Victor he surrendered his own bright professional future the second he chose sabotage over collaborative support, letting jealousy outweigh the integrity that once made him a promising team member. In the months following the successful Kowalski partnership launch, Andrea's community-centric development approach gains nationwide media attention within the real estate industry. Unlike rival developers who arrive in underserved neighborhoods with fully finalized blueprints dictating what buildings will be constructed, Andrea prioritizes sitting down with local residents first to ask what critical resources their communities lack: structurally sound public schools, a nearby hospital to cut down 40-mile emergency travel times, living wage local jobs, and basic human dignity, instead of being treated like disposable project statistics. Within just 1 month of the Kowalski project breaking ground, Andrea becomes one of the most recognizable faces in American real estate development, not for her fancy executive title, but for the heartfelt, relatable origin story that resonates with working-class audiences across the country. Eleanor and Victoria soon approach Andrea with another landmark promotion offer: founding director of a brand new internal division focused entirely on community development and social impact. tasked with overseeing every single Sterling Holdings construction project to guarantee all business operations align with the firm's core ethical commitments. Andrea's first instinct is self-doubt, that old internal voice reminding her she was once a janitor who never thought she belonged in corporate boardrooms, only a single year removed from mopping grocery store floors. Eleanor dismisses her self-doubt by pointing to Andrea's unmatched lived experience. No elite MBA textbook can teach the first-hand struggle of living paycheck to paycheck, navigating food insecurity, and watching your own family fight to afford essential medication. All challenges Andrea understands deeply, allowing her to design development projects that genuinely lift up vulnerable communities rather than gentrify them. Andrea admits she still sometimes wakes up terrified every good thing in her life is just a fleeting dream. But Eleanor reassures her dreams are merely practice for the reality she's built for herself. The official corporate board vote to confirm Andrea's new division director role passes nearly unanimously, with only one abstention from a senior executive who previously served as Victor's long-term professional mentor. Even he couldn't deny the tangible, transformative positive change Andrea had delivered for the company and local communities alike. Later that evening, Eleanor and Victoria hand Andrea a signed property deed, a fully paid-off modest home registered under both Andrea and her mother's names. It's no luxury mansion, just a humble, comfortable house, with no landlord, monthly rent, or risk of eviction hanging over their heads. Andrea tries to turn the gift down, calling it far too generous, but Eleanor frames it as a reciprocal investment rather than charity. Andrea invested her last $3 into Eleanor's mother when she needed human dignity most. And now the Sterling family is investing back into Andrea's future. Eleanor delivers a line Andrea carries with her forever. $3 purchased a loaf of bread, but radical, selfless love purchased a permanent home for Andrea and her mother. As Andrea's public profile grows, she regularly visits the underserved neighborhoods her development projects support, refusing to only send anonymous monetary donations from a distant corporate office. Local residents often ask why she takes the time to learn everyone's names and sit through lengthy community listening sessions, and Andrea always circles back to that fateful grocery store checkout moment. A stranger believed in her when she had absolutely nothing, and that single act of kindness rewrote the entire trajectory of her life. She chooses to pay that compassion forward, not out of corporate obligation, but simply because she holds the ability to lift others up now. On a random work trip back to the original grocery store, where she worked as a janitor, Andrea runs into Robert, the former manager who suspended her over the bread incident. He shares the full story of his firing 6 months after Andrea left the store. Corporate auditors uncovered he'd been accepting illegal kickbacks from food suppliers for years, violating far more serious company policies than Andrea's small act of charity ever did. Robert expresses persistent guilt for failing to stand up for Andrea the day she was disciplined, though Andrea holds no resentment toward him, telling him he was only following the narrow, rigid script his job demanded at the time. Before she leaves the market, Andrea connects with a young janitor named Marisol, mopping the same floors she once cleaned, trapped in the same cycle of low-wage labor and unfulfilled big dreams Andrea once carried. She shares details of the Sterling Foundation's full college scholarship program for low-wage frontline staff, handing Marisol a contact card and telling her kindness always cycles back to those who pass it along, just as it did for her 5 years prior. A year after Andrea's trainee program launch, Sterling Holdings hosts a large annual gala to celebrate 1 full year of community partnership growth, scholarship success stories, and tangible neighborhood progress. During the keynote speech, Eleanor calls Andrea onto the main stage to deliver a heartfelt address to the hundreds of industry leaders, investors, and local community members in attendance. Andrea opens up about how far she's traveled from that checkout line, 2 years of unending job rejection, a sick mother relying on her meager janitor wages, only $3 to her name, and a quiet choice to give all of it away to spare a stranger's shame. She clarifies she stands before the crowd not to prove good deeds always receive lavish material rewards. They often do not. Instead, she's living proof that goodness carries its own inherent reward, and the choice to care for someone else, when you have barely enough for yourself, is what makes us fully human. She leaves the audience with a core life lesson. Never wait until you've accumulated wealth or success to practice generosity. Kindness doesn't require surplus cash, free time, or a high social status. You can give whatever little you have, and compassion will always find a way to circle back to you, even if the reward arrives in a form you never anticipated. Toward the end of the gala, Eleanor pulls out a simple loaf of bread, wrapped in a paper bag, the exact same type Andrea bought for her mother that day in the grocery store. She tells Andrea those $3 permanently restored her faith in human compassion, reminding her the entire life-changing journey all began with one small, unselfish decision. The two share a quiet, emotional embrace, and Andrea's mother voices a profound realization. The most valuable investment anyone can ever make is never in buildings, real estate portfolios, or corporate stocks. It's investing genuine care into another human being. Months later, Eleanor reveals a long-planned surprise. The Sterling family intends to step back from daily company operational oversight, keeping Victoria as board chair while offering Andrea the position of CEO for the entire multi-billion-dollar holding firm. Andrea's first instinct is to say she's not ready for such immense leadership responsibility, but Eleanor counters that no one ever feels fully prepared for a CEO role. The only meaningful question is whether you're willing to step into the position and lead with your core values intact. Andrea agrees to accept the promotion on one single non-negotiable condition. She will never stop speaking with frontline janitors, retail staff, and low-wage community workers, refusing to disconnect from the people and struggles that shaped her identity. Eleanor laughs and tells her that's not a rigid condition. It's a permanent promise the company will always honor. In the years following her CEO appointment, Andrea launches an annual Bread Day celebration each year on the anniversary of the grocery store incident, a company-wide event dedicated to honoring small acts of anonymous kindness across local communities. Funded entirely through the Sterling Foundation's charitable budget, she continues distributing college scholarship opportunities to frontline low-wage workers nationwide, repeating the same promise the elderly Eleanor once gave her. When a stranger chooses compassion for you, when you have nothing, that kindness will always find its way back to touch countless other lives down the line. Andrea's life story stands as a timeless, powerful counter-narrative to the modern corporate world's obsession with credentials, wealth, and status, proving the most powerful asset any business leader can possess is an unshakable, unselfish heart.